CW6 News San Diego, One American News Network, and she is the Senior Foreign Policy Advisor for the Committee for Responsible Foreign Policy. And speaking of foreign policy, a little bit later on, I think you and I should touch on North Korea. But more insanity coming along here from this shooting. And, I've got some more quotes here I want to give you real quick.
Okay.
Some of these names, I hate it when people that are on the air all the time don't have a name that I can pronounce real easy. But anyway.
Okay.
This one's not one of them. It's Piers Morgan for the Daily Mail. Here it is. He says, Mr. President, if you don't fiercely disown the racist lunatics claiming to be inspired by you, you'll be damned by your silence. CBS, Nikki Batiste, I guess, Batiste.
Batiste?
Ever had drinks with her?
No, but Batiste.
Batiste, okay. She's a regular, I guess, on Morning Joe. Here's another one, Johnny Deutsch, Deutschca.
Johnny Deutsch?
Speculated. Deutsch?
Joyce, yeah.
Okay. You could have did it. Now you want to be on radio or TV. Okay. Anyway, so Donnie Deutsch speculated the president wouldn't issue a strong enough statement because the victims were Muslim. And then let's see, this is a quote. I'm going to be curious to see if President Trump's reaction. Obviously, he'll condemn it, but his reactions when it's a hate crime against Muslims are some of the groups he's exploited with his dog whistles. I certainly hope it's a full-hearted, angry condemnation and not in any way a pulled-back condemnation because Muslims were a target. That's Duche again said before Trump actually came out and spoke against the shooting. Two real.
And others on Fox News Sunday yesterday, Chris Wallace, was asking the chief of staff and OMB director Mulvaney that, hey, is the president going to come out and do a huge speech saying that he condemns this and that he's with the Muslim people and that they need to get out there and, we're going to go after this. It's completely unacceptable. I think that it's completely unacceptable goes without saying. Most human beings on this planet would say that's unacceptable. To have to give an entire speech on it, and you kind of can contrast that to President Obama, where his very first speech that he gave was in Egypt. And then, of course, in Egypt, shortly after that, we had the Coptic Christians, where the bombs went off, and there was, let me look at the number, there were 45 Coptic Christians that were murdered. And I don't remember the left going bananas that these Christians were murdered in Egypt after the former president had made a big speech there. When you look at the numbers on this, there are far more Christians that are killed than Muslims. Again, it goes without saying that what happened in New Zealand is atrocious, should never happen. But they already have very, very tight gun laws there. And clearly that wasn't enough to prevent something like this from happening. And then again, in the Netherlands today, there was another guy, they don't know if it was terror related, but it's being reported that it was related to that. 3 more people killed in a tram. This stuff is happening, and it's happening, unfortunately. The numbers of this are Muslims that are living in Western countries, and I don't mean just the U.S., I mean Europe and around the globe. Well, they're the ones that are bearing the brunt of actually committing the majority of these attacks. Very few numbers when you look at the grand scheme of things.
Not to play it down, but I have to in this case. The 3 that were killed on the tram, right?
Yeah.
All right, and who knows their nationality or whatever, but they got to play on it because, hey, here's another chance to talk about, what can we blame Trump on?
Mm-hmm.
But why don't they say, and by the way, there were 3 killed on a tram, and we had 20 killed in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay. No, they can't do that.
No.
CNN, another one of these intercept columnists, B.D. Hassan, M-E-H-D-I. Want that one there?
Yeah.
Know her?
I won't take that one.
He said, he or she said, right? Okay. Far-right terrorism is on the rise in the United States and blamed President Trump for attacks both here and abroad.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on. But unfortunately, Kimberly, there are so many people that take this fake news, incorrect news, for gospel.
Well, they do.
Gospel becomes
And a great example of that is what happened at Fort Hood, where we had a man that was in the U.S. military, did not want to go overseas and serve for the U.S., government and in the military. And then he decided he was going to, he communicated with Anwar al-Awlaki, the radicalized terrorist that was in Yemen that we drone strike and killed him. Whether that's lawful or not, it's a whole nother story. But he said that he allied with him, and then he went and killed how many people on the base? Under the Obama administration, that was workplace violence. So now you've got people like, the mainstream media and that. So they're not going to really account that in the numbers because that was workplace violence. That wasn't terrorism, which of course we all know was terrorism. Anytime you do something like that, it's like yelling flyer. It's terrorism. It's a terrorist act.
And he shouted, whatever it was, Akbar,
Allah Akbar.
What was the total count? Because, they had to redo that count, now.
Yeah, they did, because some of them were, civilian employees, and some of them were actually in the military. I'm not 100% on what that final number turned out to be. I think it was in the 30s, though.
All right, so let's say there's 33. All right, just for the heck of it. So now it has to be 32. All right, it was Obama's a Democrat. So now it'll be 32 because, see, one of the dead that they counted was in the womb. All right.
Yeah. Well, it's true. That's another argument I think that can be made, but it's a terrorist act. Whether they go to a recruiting station, in the South, whether they go to bases, whether it's the DC snipers that went around and terrorized people, shooting at people, getting gas in the district area here around DC. And a lot of this, they don't want to throw those numbers in because it doesn't look too good for them. And again, I can sit here and give you the date and of what happened on January 7th and 9th, Charlie Hebdo attack, killed 22 people in France. 2015, a Muslim was decapitated by a radicalized Frenchman, and then and he continued on with his van to run his van into a gas factory to start an explosion. In 2016, a policeman and his wife were murdered by jihadists. Another act in 2016, July, truck was driven into the crowds at Bastille Day in Nice, and that killed 86 people. On July, again in 2007, or again in July, in Normandy, 2 jihadists attacked a church during mass, killing an 86-year-old priest. 2017, we have a Muslim stabbed to death 2 young women in France on a train screaming Allah Akbar. And then last year, we have another terrorist attack that happened over in France, or actually in London, where they went through the supermarket in the area and started stabbing people and killing people. These events are just in the last couple of years. This isn't counting, back to 9/11. This is like in the last couple of years. And these were, predominantly Christians that were killed. So, in this sense, again, nobody condones it whatsoever. And I'm actually proud that most of the media is not mentioning the name of this person that perpetrated this attack, because we're giving him glory, and that's what he wants, is his 15 minutes of fame. So I'm very glad I haven't been doing that for years, because I always thought that's what they wanted. They wanted that notoriety. So in this case, I'm actually going to give the media, most media outlets are trying not to reveal his name and show the pictures. And that's a good way. That's a good way to go about kind of disarming this and hopefully being able to control it. But you got to look at New Zealand. It's a country with tight gun control laws, and this happened anyways.
I think, because I got this article from Lisa Donor, L-E-E-S-A, Lisa K. Donor, talking about New Zealand.
Yeah.
It says, getting your hands on a firearm in New Zealand is no easy task. And I'll tell you what, just real quick here, owning a firearm in the land of Kiwi is not a right, it's a privilege bestowed upon those who are willing to run the gauntlet of gun laws, and there are many. Everyone must be licensed, background checked, they have to take safety classes. It is a long and arduous process to legally own a firearm. And if you think of a gun control law, New Zealand likely already has it on the books.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, all right? You have an unarmed person in the mosque that was the only person that, did anything because he grabbed the gun and
Yep.
he fired 2 or 3 times. But the interesting thing, let me find it here. Yes. This guy, okay, and he had Turk Slayer, that was written in the Greek word on his rifle. He had legally bought the 5 guns
Yeah.
that he used. People always say, how do they do this? How do they do this? And I always say, well, you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing to kind of keep in mind on this as well is New Zealand's part of the Five Eyes, which means that, they're one of America's closest allies, and we're supposed to be sharing information on possible terrorism acts that are being planned, that are, trying to figure out why they happened, if they missed it. They're supposed to be sharing that information, the Five Eye countries, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France, and the UK. And it seems to me that someone definitely dropped the ball here on this. I mean, obviously this person had tendencies to go this direction, but he didn't, in his, 70-page plus manifesto, he basically was saying that, he didn't, America was not like one of the countries he really respected. I think, one of the things he said was, I respect, what China's doing. And of course, we've covered the Chinese Uyghurs on this program. And what they're doing is imprisoning and trying to do re-education camps with the Muslim people in China. That's something that he admired. That's not something that the United States admires or does or has done.
Rather than blaming Trump, let's look at China. Because
Yeah.
like you say, they're the ones locking up 1 million Muslims because they don't like their religion.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, his manifesto. He also had a little portable camera, on a helmet, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's a GoPro. I hate to say that, but I think that's what it was, a GoPro. Athletes use those all the time. Yeah.
Before they took it down or something.
Yeah. Well, it drew a lot of people to the internet, I suppose. I don't know how Facebook does this. This country, we have a First Amendment. Obviously, we don't want to see things like that on the internet. So it makes it a little bit tougher. But Facebook said they're working now even harder than ever to find these things and take them down before they actually, go on and on. Because I believe it was live for like 6 or 7 minutes. An incredibly long time for something like that.
I actually had the actual time, and I was thinking it was longer than that. You're always, so here it is. The gunman live streamed 17 minutes of the rampage at the Al-Noor Mosque.
Yeah, they're talking about too the going from one to the other too. So he was, trying to go from the one mosque to the other mosque. So that's,
Then it says the Facebook, Twitter, Google scrambled to take down the video, widely available on social media for hours after the bloodbath. But you could probably say something about some Congress lady, from Michigan or Minnesota, and Facebook can get it down in 10 seconds.
Probably, yeah. And I just want to mention, I know we're coming up on a break here again, that, Turkey, we need to look at Turkey here because president, he was prime minister, now he's like dictator for life. Erdogan came out and said that, he was just aghast at how Muslims were being treated, that this is unacceptable. We can't allow anybody, right-wing extremists or otherwise, to kill Muslims. It's, completely unacceptable and all this, but yet he has no problem with, Muslims killing Muslims in the Middle East, which happens every single day. So you have to kind of think that, he's making a statement like that to get at President Trump. And because Turkey's still a member of NATO, we're supposed to be sharing information. They have access to state-of-the-art military equipment, satellite imagery, and things of that nature. This kind of, when I heard him speak out about this, my first thought was that here's a country that's trying to coalesce all of the Muslims around him, because now that ISIS is done with their caliphate, it's long been told that President Erdogan in Turkey thinks he's the next caliphate. He's going to be the next leader of the caliphate. And I think that, yeah.
Yeah. And when we come back, you don't know, I'm sorry, I'm 1 minute in. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say that, this is something that countries do to coalesce the population together, and then they form a united front. Much as the United States was a country at back and forth over the Gore election, 9/11 happened and we all came together. So this is something that countries use as a defining moment in history and to unite the population to fight back. And I just think the words that Erdogan was using were very telling.